If at any point in your creative process you feel like something that you're working on is just so impossible, you're not sure if you should chase it, just know that when I was writing Becoming Her, I also felt like the production of it was going to be impossible. But I did it anyways, just running on hope. And now I can tell you that Becoming Her is in development and now very much possible. And I could not be more happy. Obviously, I'm very happy because being a filmmaker, being a screenwriter is my absolute dream. But I think in this specific case, my desire to be a filmmaker has been set aside for how excited I am for Marilyn to get her story out there. This is the only biopic on the market that has been indirectly written by Marilyn Monroe herself, because I do utilize all of her private writing, and getting to know her through her writing, I was heartbroken how much she's been misrepresented, and she's always felt like no one ever saw her. As she said herself, people looked at her like she was a mirror, and they would only cast upon her their own lewd thoughts, and they would never really see her. And so that perfectly sums up every sort of production ever made about her, or how anybody perceives her. Everyone has only believed this fake character of her. It's absolutely bizarre how it happens, and I feel like a part of it is that there's so much greed and envy that surrounded Marilyn at the time, that still surrounds Marilyn, and people lose sight of the principle, the value, the virtue of being honest. And I also feel like it's a little bit rooted in sexism, because you don't really see this sort of level of misinterpretation with Elvis or Bob Dylan or other artists. Of course they dramatize things, but it's always rooted in truth. And then there's Marilyn, who they really truly invented this completely false story about her. And it's almost like as if they're saying that Marilyn is not interesting enough as who she really was. And so they throw this cheap Hollywood glitter over a diamond and call it a day because it's just as shiny. But I can promise you she's very interesting. She's very inspiring, so much more relatable in real life. And I'm excited to see how many women feel represented through Becoming Her. There's so much that we cover that I find highly relatable with so many people, both man and woman. And I'm super excited for her, because now after 60 plus years, she's going to be able to tell the world who she really is through Becoming Her. So yes, I'm excited to be a filmmaker, but that is overshadowed by my excitement for the truth to come out, for something that she has hoped for is coming to fruition. And I'm so excited. So this is your sign. Yes, you should pursue that thing that you're feeling very unsure about, because you never know what could happen, or the people that find you along the way that believe in you to get you to where you need to be. So yeah, starting off with a strong one. Hi, we're in my kitchen. I was just really excited to tell you guys that. And I feel like that's the theme of today's video, is understanding, truly grasping how much free will that you have, how much power you have to be an individual, how much sadness there is to not allowing yourself to be human. And part of being human is to see and taste the world, to experience the world. If you're not experiencing the world, you're not alive. And I know that the government and the people in society, they all set their rules and do a good job at removing the human part of everybody and turning, thinkers into doers, and kind of like taking the soul out of everyone. But you gotta make it your mission, your life's mission, to defy everyone. I've always been a very defiant child. I think that's why it comes very easy for me to do whatever it is I want to do, despite getting thousands of pushbacks and telling me you can't do that, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't think or say this, and I just do it all. But I think it comes easier for me because I was like that as a kid, and so every time authority had an opinion about anything I've ever wanted to do. It was enticing for me to go and do the opposite of what they'd say. And my dad would tell you this. He said I was a relatively good child. I made great choices, but I made defiant choices. I was always a kid that did whatever it is I wanted to do. At times it got me in trouble. I never really got into like severe trouble, but I've gotten in trouble. But I've always had a strong sense of individuality and a disdain for authority. And when anybody gets an authoritative tone with me, it doesn't sit well with me. In fact, it kind of motivates me to do the opposite even more. But it's important to realize that whether or not you're naturally a defiant person or not, it's important to try to be. Try to do things every day that exercise your free will. Because when you live this way, you tend to experiment more, and when you experiment more, you experience more. That's the key. I know that this world makes it very hard to do that. A part of it is understanding why. At the root of it, individualism is dangerous. It creates thinkers instead of doers, and because we're in a system like we are now, in general, I think that individualism can break that apart, and they would very much prefer a beehive or sheep mentality. Unfortunately, the people around you oftentimes are, lack of better words, brainwashed to also exist and stay in line. And they're the ones talking in your ears to tell you that you should stay in line. So whenever you're feeling this small burst of confidence, sometimes you're thinking, oh, but what will people say? That's the beehive, buzzing in your ear, trying to keep you in line. Whenever you get that, feel inspired to defy that feeling. Feel inspired to go, F you. You know what I mean? Because that's not anything but the voices of other people. And the only voice that should be in your head should be your own voice. It should be your own voice. Hopefully your own voice is a good voice. But to exist in the plot line that was written by other people is such a meek existence. There's a lot of people with really bad intentions out there. There's a lot of people who don't have bad intentions but were brainwashed by people who have bad intentions. So meanwhile, your peers might not have bad intentions to harm you. Who made them act and think the way they do are people who have bad intentions to harm you. So you see how you have to be very careful with what you let into your mind, and anything that stops you from being authentically yourself and pursuing the things that you dream of is a harmful thing, and that needs to be eliminated from your day-to-day life. I feel like a big portion of people not exercising free will as well is the fact that there's not a lot of inspiration out and about. And if there was another advice I'd give to exercising free will, I'd say to feel inspired by your surroundings. And it's hard to do that when our surroundings have been molded by the brutalist movement. If you don't know what the brutalist movement is, it's basically a shift in time where very ornate, very detailed buildings ended up turning into very flat box buildings for the sake of budget costs, and it was an art style of its own, and they were trying to go for the future. But unfortunately, capitalism has taken the brutalist style and mass produced it in a way that even that once had its own sense of art has been depleted for the sake of convenience, time, and affordability. And a regular shopping plaza or a mall or a government building, all these buildings around us are relatively pretty ugly, not very colorful, not very detailed, and that does affect the mind as well. And so it's important to surround your home with things that stimulate your creativity, things that you look at and you go, wow, there was an artist that painted this, he felt inspired to produce it, and there it is on my kitchen counter, and that's going to inspire you to also do the same thing, is to hope to produce something that will be on someone else's kitchen counter, you know? So this is something I'm practicing on. So for example, this bookcase behind me used to be filled with very aesthetic, like TJ Maxx stuff, home goods stuff. None of the things in the bookcase mattered. It was just pretty in combination. And then when I started really seeing how that sort of way of living can affect someone's creativity, and knowing that I am an artist, I realized, like, oh my goodness, I was harming myself by living this way. And so I replaced it all with knickknacks and things that make me think, good memories, keepsakes, stuff like that. And I've noticed a difference for sure, and I'm still working on it. I noticed that there was a correlation in this when I went to a vintage house, and I felt more inspired there than I did in my own. It had beautiful detailed work and different fabrics and different paintings and different knickknacks, and it wasn't super cluttered or anything. It was just the right amount of stuff. And seeing, a carved statue even made me feel inspired to do what the greats did. And I still find, I think that I'm very well disciplined, and I still find the means to be inspired to go for things here, but I found how much more easy it was to do it there. And so I now learned that I need to change my house in a way that breeds that level of creativity, that level of confidence, that level of inspiration. So I think your surroundings definitely matter quite a bit when you're in pursuit of breaking free, to then use your free will to chase what you want to do. And I know that maybe after you're done watching this video, you're not gonna go and stand up and go, I'm gonna start doing exactly all of that. But you can do little things for starters, just to get in a habit of defiance. The goal really is to defy everything you've been taught. So for example, what I like to do is I'll buy a little sponge cake, and instead of slicing off one end of it like you do, you take a knife, you cut it neatly, whatever, I take a spoon and I eat it from the dead center. Whatever part of it I like the most, I start there first. You're not supposed to do that. Society tells you not to do that. I do it, and it's the tiny little things like that, the tiny little defiances that train your brain to stop listening to society and do things in a way that benefit you, that make you happier, and represent your sense of individuality better. So if there's anything that you prefer to do but you don't do because you feel like you're not supposed to do it that way, or whatever the case may be, start doing it that way. And when you do that every day, it'll trickle down to defying opinions of others. And so when your peers start ridiculing you or saying you shouldn't do something, it doesn't affect you as much, because you already live in a sense of defiance every day. And then if you add things that inspire you around you, you will also feel more comfortable to sit in your little inspiration nest. You'll want to be there, which then leads you to a lot of silence and productivity time. And being alone is one of the most important things that you could ever do for yourself, is to be alone. Being alone is my favorite thing in the world. I love it. I'm an introvert. I enjoy my own company, but I feel like no one can ever really know themselves, let alone focus on themselves, if they're not completely alone. So it's important to set some time aside where you're alone. But yeah, I feel like there's not much else to it, other than being very, very aware that the society is built to keep you down. Finding ways to be defiant that are harmless. You want to do harmless little things. And, surround yourself with inspiration, shut as much people out, and do what it is you want to do. Because there's always going to be naysayers, there's always going to be 101 reasons why you shouldn't do something. All you need is that one reason, and that one reason should outweigh 100 reasons. So I really hope that this kind of like spread a seed of thought in your mind that gets the gears turning, because I feel like now more than ever we have become such a beehive to the point where it's actually very toxic. And I'm seeing this, like I've been on the internet for over 10 years. Like I have seen such a dangerous shift in society from, everyone's a little bit individual, but you're relatively a together society to complete, it's gross how beehive everyone's become, whether they're on one side of the hive or another. They've just become such a mob of existence. It's just very, it's very gross. That's the only word I could really use for it. So I think the true challenge to life is not to find yourself by the end of it, but to remain yourself by the end of it in a society that actively finds sadistic pleasure in breaking up your paragraphs into sentences. And they do that because they're told to do that, but also misery loves company. And, by the time that they realize, wow, like, I didn't do anything, or I didn't become what I wanted to become, well, I see this young person doing it, and I don't like that they're doing it because I hate that I didn't do it, so I'm going to go and write a comment and say, you shouldn't be doing that. Misery loves company. And unfortunately, by the time that a lot of these people wake up, it's too late for them in their mind, and so then they try to make sure that everyone fails together. It's a very bizarre phenomenon, but I often say that if society collectively believes in something, it's probably the wrong thing, which it doesn't apply to everything, but I think it applies to the basic principle that, if society is generally miserable, then do they really have the answer to what it means to live? How you should live. They don't know. They don't know because they're all miserable people collectively. And it's always the outliers that are the happiest, the outliers that are the most successful, the outliers that really make a name for themselves. It's not the general society that does, it's the ones who go against the grain, such as Marilyn Monroe went against the grain. She was an outlier. And people didn't like her for that either at the time. They would spread rumors about her just to tear her down. They would tell her that she shouldn't pursue things, which you'll all see in the biopic. There's people in her life that hated that she was doing so well because they weren't doing so well, which is also in the biopic. So that's why it's so important to find pleasure in defying society. And this is something that Marilyn also says, is that she found pleasure in punishing the people who broke her, who kept trying to tear her down. So she would make them wait for her. And I think when you live like that, though it can be very volatile, it's very rewarding. And so this is the video that's supposed to inspire you to just be more yourself, whatever that looks like to you, and to be very weary of what you've already learned, and to second guess what you already think and know, and to make sure that it makes sense to you. Be curious, be defiant, and that's going to take you pretty far. But thanks for tuning in. I think that's really all I have to say about that. I could go on and on a psychological level, on a historical level, but I think you guys already are catching the drift, and maybe this is all you really need to know. So I'll leave it there. But thanks for tuning in. I don't know how much I can update you guys on this project per se, but whatever I'm allowed to update you on, I will. It's going to be a few years. It's, movies take a long time to make. So don't count on anything like a few months from now, but I'm just very, very excited, and whatever I can share, I will. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for being so supportive through it, those that chose to be, and I can't wait. but thanks for coming over. I don't know, this turned into like an announcement with a philosophy lesson attached to it, but you guys have been really liking these like kitchen rant type things, and so whenever I feel it, I just do. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.